I've been using the Galaxy Z Fold 7 for a week now, and I just want to candidly share some of my experience in this first week. So one of the first things I've noticed after using this for an extended period of time is that when I do want to open it, it is actually a bit more difficult to do than on previous generations, mainly because it's so thin. And you kind of have to just press in a little bit harder before pulling out, otherwise your finger just kind of slips off when you're trying to open it. I think this is just going to take a bit more getting used to, and if you put a case on your phone, then that's probably just going to fix the issue right there. Battery life has been pretty good. I use the phone pretty lightly, just generally speaking. I only had about 4 hours of screen on time over the past almost 2 days, and that finally took me down to 2 or 3%. So if you use it a bit more heavily, you should still be able to get through a single day without any issues. If you use it heavily, I doubt you're going to get into that second day, but at least for one day, from when you take it off the charger in the morning to when you go to bed at night, you should be perfectly fine. When it comes time to charge your device, you'll get about 50% in 30 minutes if you started charging at 2%. And you're going to get a full charge at about an hour and a half. And that's pretty typical for Samsung's folding devices. The previous generations had a pretty similar charge speed. And to be clear, that was with the fastest possible charging of 25 watts, so you won't see any faster with a different charger. Having the larger cover screen has made a significant difference. I've noticed that I never really feel like I have to open the screen to get something done. I really only open it now if I'm gonna watch something like a YouTube video, or if I'm trying to get some work done in like an Excel sheet or something for work. And that wasn't the case with the Fold 6. I would often be opening this even to do basic things like send someone a message. This one, I don't think I've opened it even one time to send a text. The thinness of the device has made a more practical difference than I thought it would. Like originally, I would just open it up and look at it and be like, wow, that's so thin, that's so cool. And it was more of like this kind of novelty, really fun to see and use, cool to hold type thing. But from a practical standpoint, it's actually made a significant difference in that when it's in my pocket, it just feels normal. Like it feels like I've got like an S25 Ultra in my pocket, for example. And previous generations of the Fold always felt big in the pocket. And there was even a time where I reached in my pocket to pull the phone out, and I thought I was pulling out the S25 Ultra because it's just so thin. It just feels very similar to that form factor. I have noticed one drawback with this form factor though, and it's mainly because the cameras stick like way off the back of the phone now. So when you put this on a table, it wobbles like crazy, like frustratingly so. Like if this is folded on a table and you just want to reply to a quick message without picking the phone up, like good luck. This thing wobbles like crazy, so you're probably just going to end up picking the phone up to send the message anyway. And maybe I'll get used to it over time, but this is by far the most wobbly phone I've ever had. And of course, if you're someone who uses a case, that's going to be a lot less of an issue, but I figured it was worth pointing out. And I've had a chance to start testing out the cameras, and the one-time zoom camera is really good. It is a significant difference over previous generations, but I do miss the telephoto camera on the S25 Ultra. There's a time where I was trying to get a more zoomed-in shot of something, and the zoomed-in shots are good, they're okay, but it's not like what you're gonna get on an S25 Ultra. So what I'd love to see in the future is maybe like a Z Fold Ultra, where Samsung makes it a bit thicker, gives us a larger battery, gives us the S20, it would be like S26 Ultra series cameras, so we get that long zoom as well, and add back in the S Pen functionality, because that is something I do still miss on the Fold 7. There's been times where I'd love to have just had the stylus, and I just don't, and that's been kind of frustrating. So hopefully, again, Samsung makes like an Ultra series of the Fold that gives us all the things we want. Obviously, it would come at a higher price point, but for those of us who really take advantage of all those features, I think it'd be worth it. While Samsung has made improvements to their own built-in applications to take even more advantage of the large inner display, there are still some applications that don't quite work as well on a foldable device as they do on a candy bar style device like the S25 Ultra. Now, to be fair, most of the apps that people use on a day-to-day basis, especially social media apps, have all been optimized for the larger display. But there are some more nuanced things that haven't worked as well on the Fold 7 as they do on the S25 Ultra. Like, for example, I went to upload a YouTube short from my Fold 7, and I wasn't able to adjust the thumbnail, and I was just more limited on what I could do when uploading it from the Fold versus the S25 Ultra. So just be aware that while most of the apps you're going to be using are probably going to be perfectly fine on the Fold and they're going to be adapted to use that wider screen, there may still be some other applications that might have a bit limited functionality, or they don't take full advantage of the larger display. productivity on the Fold 7 has been so much better having a large screen versus either just the cover screen or if you have just a candy bar style phone. Like, for example, when I had to do some work in Shopify for my website, not sponsored, I just happened to use Shopify for the website. It was just easy to do everything I needed to do right on the phone. I didn't have to go to my computer like I typically do. And even with something like web browsing, like if I want to look at a desktop version of a website, I can do that, and there's plenty of screen real estate to have it not be super tiny on the screen. And that's been useful for accessing certain tools on websites that just aren't available on the mobile version. When it comes to the punch hole camera, like the camera itself is really good, and I'm still working on my deep dive comparison between the Fold 7 and the Fold 6, 5, and 4. So stay tuned if you really want to see how all of the cameras compare to each other. But generally speaking, I like the upgrade, and something that I think is really worth pointing out here is that if I jump into YouTube and I open up one of my videos, you can see that the punch hole is actually above the video, so you still get the full width, and the punch hole is not going to interfere with your video that you're watching. And even if I switch over into landscape view, it's still not interfering with the video, and it's not until you go into full screen mode that you finally see the little dot right there. And if I flip it over, it's just going to obviously move the dot to the other corner, but this honestly doesn't really interfere with the viewing experience because it's off in the corner. And just for perspective, you do still get a bigger video on the Fold 7 without going into landscape mode or even making the video into full screen mode compared to the S25 Ultra. Even if I expand the screen on the S25 Ultra so that you can now see the punch hole on it, and then do the same on the Fold, you still get a way better viewing experience on the Fold. So the point I'm trying to make is that the punch hole really hasn't been a big deal for me compared to having the under display camera on the previous generations, because these cameras were absolute garbage. If you saw my full review of the Fold 6, you'd know, and you would have seen that camera comparison. It's atrociously bad. So we at least now have a usable camera for video calls or conferencing, or just taking a selfie on a wider screen. It's much better than having the under display camera in my personal opinion, but let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. This next one's an interesting one. So both of these phones should have about the same peak brightness according to Samsung, but when I take them outside to use in like direct sunlight on a hot day, I've noticed that the Fold 6 got brighter than the Fold 7. The Fold 7 is still perfectly readable, but you could tell that it just didn't get quite as bright as the Fold 6. And that's true for both the main display and the cover display. So I don't know if Samsung needs to push an update to the Fold 7 to adjust how it figures out its brightness, or if this really does just not get quite as bright as the Fold 6. So if you're someone who happens to have both a Fold 6 and Fold 7, could you test this and let us know in the comments below if this is true on your devices as well, or is this just kind of a one-off issue for me? And this is just from preliminary testing. I'm going to test this a lot more in my full comparison review between the Fold 4, 5, 6, and 7, so stay tuned for that. When it comes to gaming, I actually don't really do any mobile gaming, so I'm not quite the person to ask for this. But generally speaking, since you do have a significantly larger screen, if you play something like an FPS game, like a Call of Duty or something like that, then it is going to be easier to see the enemy players because you just have that larger screen, so you are going to have that advantage. And if you're playing some sort of a strategy game with a ton of different buttons and icons around the corners, obviously that'll also be easier with this phone because of that larger screen. And for performance, this does have the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip in it, so obviously that's going to do a really good job with gaming performance, generally speaking. The only potential issue I see is that since this is such a thin device, the thermal performance might not be as good as something like the Fold 6, which was much thicker, but since it does have more surface area, that could be counteracted by just more surface area to dissipate the heat. So that's going to be kind of a toss-up. I'll know more about that when I finish my full comparison review, but I just wanted to point that out as a potential point of concern. So if you haven't pre-ordered the Fold 7 yet, but you do want to get it and you want to get the best possible deal, I do have an exclusive affiliate link for you guys in the description and pinned comment. That'll get you a bonus discount on top of Samsung's pre-order deals. Just know that the discount only runs for 30 minutes, so if you see it disappear during checkout, just come back to this video, click the link again, and you should see the discount added back in. And that is an affiliate link, so using that does help the channel, and I do really appreciate those of you who do use the links because I literally couldn't afford to purchase all the products I review on this channel without you guys using those links. So a huge thanks to all of you who've been using them. And if you guys are still on the fence with the Fold 7 and you want to wait to see my super deep dive comparison to all of these previous generations of the Fold, then consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss that video. In the meantime, you can check out this video instead, where I do more of a first impressions comparison between these devices and some of the main differences without really getting into the cameras and battery life and that sort of stuff. So that's it for this tech episode. Jesus loves you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one real soon.